I think there's this narrative around quarterbacks, around busts, around the urgency and desire to define and categorize the caliber of a pick, the caliber of a player before he even finishes his first and a lot of times second season in the NFL. And if there isn't this year two hard deadline where they don't see success, then the word busts just gets thrown onto these guys. And apparently they can never live that down. There's a lot of examples of that not being true and not being applicable. You got a guy like Baker Mayfield this last week who apparently has just found his pocket and comfort zone in Tampa Bay and had the best performance of any quarterback in the NFL this past week. You've got, Brock Purdy, who I believe was placed into one of the most favorable circumstances, situations, best play caller, weapons, availability. Not to mention he's executed at a high level, and it turns out Brock Purdy is really good. I mention all these things because you've got Bryce Young in Carolina going first overall. You've obviously got the direct comparison he'll always have for the remainder of his career to who was the second pick in the draft, CJ Stroud. And everybody at this point, after week one of year two for Bryce Young, slapped him with the giant all red font sticker of bust. I am going to tell you, Bryce Young's not a bust. He's not a bust. There's a little bit of this in my heart as an Alabama fan to try to defend him. But if you actually sit down and watch the film on the Carolina Panthers, I'm not sure we've seen a team in the last decade that's had less talent as an entire team than the 2023 and now 2024 Carolina Panthers. Watched a video of the Saints taking an offensive snap, handing the ball off to Alvin Kamara. All four players on the Carolina Panthers defensive line got pushed off the ball 3 to 5 yards. Snap, engage with the offensive line, and pushed back 5 yards. Last year, Bryce Young led the league in sacks, or at least if he didn't lead the league, he was in the top 2 behind Sam Howell. Again, if you watch the film, guys, you can see Bryce Young in Alabama and Bryce Young in Carolina. Bryce Young, not the biggest guy, no question about it. Also, Bryce Young won the Heisman in Alabama. Why did he win the Heisman? Because it was just luck? Because college is 15 steps lower than the NFL? Because nobody had a good year and Bryce Young had a decent year? No, none of those things are true. Bryce Young had an incredible supporting cast. Bryce Young had a good offensive line in Alabama. Bryce Young had the supplemental weapons around him on the outside. He had an effective run game. He was protected enough. The offensive play calling allowed for him to see over the offensive line to deliver the ball in a lot of cases if there was defensive pressure. These are all factors that go into the success of a quarterback, especially a young rookie quarterback. Not only shows itself in the numbers, but in the level of confidence in the execution. Bryce Young's made throws so far in his NFL career that he never would have dreamed of making in college at any point. But he has to force the issue. He has to get rid of the ball. If he doesn't get rid of the ball, half of these interceptions he's thrown, he gets his head taken off. And then when he doesn't pull the trigger and throw an ugly interception to any of the receivers that are never open, ever, he'll hold on to the ball and then he gets his head taken off. Do I think Bryce Young's going to be a generational Hall of Fame top 5 quarterback of all time talent? No, I don't. But it's an incredibly unfair comparison to make between Bryce Young and the team he's on versus CJ Stroud and the team he's on, or any other rookie quarterback, any other circumstance, any other situation. Bryce Young, yeah, probably a little bit undersized. But Bryce Young, in my opinion, is just as good as a guy like Derek Carr. Why did Derek Carr have a monster day against the Panthers? And why did Bryce Young have a bad day? Or at least an average day with an ugly interception? Why? It's the team around him. It's the supporting cast. It's the offensive line. It's the play calling. It's protection. It's all these different factors. What sucks for Bryce Young is he went into such a bad situation, such a bad situation. I'm not sure there's opportunity for him to ever really recover from this and become a bona fide top 15 starting quarterback in the NFL. It's starting to look like, based on what happened to him, that he was put into a tough spot, may end up being, a backup type guy towards the back end of his career. We'll see what happens. Bryce Young's not a bust. He's not a bust. His team is, I want to emphasize this, historically bad. Historically. one of the worst assembled football teams of the 21st century, maybe the worst, over a 2-year full span. Bryce Young won the Heisman, and he was the number one pick for a reason, right? And if he's not the number one pick in the draft that he goes number one, and let's say the Panthers say, we want Stroud, Bryce Young's going number two. Like, it's not a coincidence that he was basically consensus a top 2 pick in the NFL draft and a Heisman Trophy. It's not a coincidence. It's not just sheer luck. He's an extremely talented, smart, capable quarterback that's on a historically bad football team in every single facet. Every single facet. Last year and this year. Every unit you could think. Special teams, offensive line, defensive line, wide receiver help, defensive secondary, running back talent, play calling. Like, everything with the Panthers is the worst in the NFL. How would Bryce Young be? Like, it's impossible for him to be good. So I don't want to hear bust anymore. I don't want to hear, let's get him out of there, right? I mean, if you're, a team in the next 2 years that's looking for at least maybe a stopgap or filler at quarterback, go to the Panthers. Go make a trade. It's going to be low buy value. Go do it. But Bryce Young's not a bust, man. And I'm tired of hearing that because he's been so screwed in his NFL career so far.